Good evening and welcome to Crawley Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting of the 6th of April 2021. My name is Jonathan Purdy and I chair the committee. The Planning Committee will be considering two items this evening, and I do propose to take them on the order on which they appear on the agenda, which is available on the Council's website. Unfortunately, there are no in-person public speaking rights at this virtual meeting. However, members of the public and ward councillors wishing to make representations have had the opportunity to submit written statements in advance of the meeting. Any statements that we have received will be read to the committee and the public watching by Democratic Services Officer. So to kick things off, can I please ask the officers supporting the meeting to introduce themselves, giving their names and their job title. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Ms Matthews, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening, I'm Jess Tamplin, Democratic Services Support Officer.
Good evening, I'm Jean McPherson. I'm the Group Manager for the Development Management team. Thank you.
I'm Val Cheeseman, Principal Planning Officer.
Linda Saunders.
Good evening, I'm Clem Smith. I'm the Head of Economy and Planning.
Apologies, Linda Saunders, Planning Solicitor.
Good evening, I'm Jean McPherson.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to invite members of the committee to confirm their attendance, but before I do so, can I please ask that everyone has their mobile phones either switched off or on silent, and they're unlikely to be disturbed during the course of the meeting. Committee members are reminded that they should have their microphones turned off unless they are speaking, and their cameras turned off unless they're speaking or requesting to speak. As always with virtual meetings, when invited to speak, please unmute yourself and pause for about 3 seconds to allow for the slight delay in connection. And committee members are asked to be aware of who they will follow in the voting process and to prepare accordingly. Apologies for absence. Have we received any apologies for absence? I'm getting a no that says we haven't. That's great. So we will now be taking agenda items 2, 3 and 4 together. That's disclosure of interests, lobbying and the minutes. Can I please ask the members when they're called to confirm the ward that they represent, if they have any declarations of interest to make, if they have any lobbying declarations to make, and if they agree with the minutes of the planning meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Askoff, would you mute yourself? Thank you. If they have any lobbying declarations to make, if they agree with the minutes of the planning committee held on the 9th of March 2021, and if they have visited the site of any of the applications. Would the Democratic Services Officer please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ashcroft.
Good evening, Councillor Liam Askoff for Gossip's Green and North East Broadfield. I have no declaration of interest, no lobbying to declare. I approve the minutes of the last meeting, and I have visited both.
Councillor Belbin.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Andrew Belbin representing Pound Hill South and Worth. I had no disclosures of interest to make. I have no lobbying declarations. I approve the minutes of the 9th of March 2021, and I've independently visited agenda items 5 and 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hart, could you please turn your camera on?
Good evening, Councillor Julie Hart, Ifield and Ifield West. I have got no declarations and I haven't been lobbied on anything, and I approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Councillor Irvine.
Yes, good evening. Councillor Ian Irvine, representing Broadfield Ward. I have been lobbied on nothing. I have a personal non-prejudicial interest to declare in item 5 as Cabinet Member for Housing, and a personal non-prejudicial interest in items 5 and 6 as a member of the Cycling and Walking Forum. I agree with the minutes of the previous meeting, and I have not undertaken any site visits.
Councillor Jaggard.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Kim Jaggard from Maidenbower. I have no declarations of interest. I've not been lobbied. I agree the minutes of the last meeting, and I've visited both sites.
Councillor Mughali.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Mughali for Tilgate Ward. I have no declarations to make. I have not been lobbied. I approve the minutes, and I have visited sites items 5 and 6. Thank you.
Councillor Pickett.
Hello, I'm Councillor Mike Pickett of Southgate Ward. I have no declarations to make, and I have not been lobbied by anybody. Oh, and I agree that the minutes of the last meeting are a true record of what happened.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy.
Hello again. Jonathan Purdy, representing Three Bridges and the town centre. I have a personal non-prejudicial declaration to make in respect of agenda item 6. That is to say, I am employed by UK Power Networks, a consultee who chose not to respond to the consultation. I have not been lobbied on either of the items. I agree that the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 9th of March 2021 are a true and accurate reflection of that meeting, and I've made independent site visits to both sites in question, agenda items 5 and 6. Thank you.
Oops.
Councillor Rana.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Tahira Rana. Sorry, I represent Broadfield, and I agree with the minutes of the last meeting. I have no declarations to declare, and I have not visited any sites. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Good evening, Peter Smith, representing Ifield and Ifield West. I am a member of the Crawley Walking and Cycle Forum. I haven't been lobbied on either of the applications. I have made independent site visits to both application 5 and application 6, and I agree the minutes of the 9th of March 2021 as an accurate record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The committee has agreed that the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of March 2021 are an accurate record. So we will now move on to the planning applications, beginning with agenda item 5, application number CR 2020 0548 ARM, Steers Lane, Pound Hill, Crawley. Can I please ask the planning officer to introduce the report to the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just turn to the presentation for Steers Lane in Pound Hill. Right, location plan on the screen in front of you. To give the context, the site is located to the north of Steers Lane, so that's to the north of the main Forgewood neighbourhood that's being constructed, and Balcombe Road lies to the west of the site. Outline planning permission has been granted on appeal for the development of this site for up to 185 dwellings. And this application is for the reserve matters for the siting, design, external appearance and landscaping for that development. So the outline planning permission established the principle of 185 units on the site and also the access point. The permission is subject to 37 conditions and is also the subject of a Section 106 legal agreement that deals with various matters including affordable housing and contributions. Condition 1 of the outline permission requires the development to be in accordance with the concept plan. So this plan comes from the outline permission, and it's a plan that shows the general arrangements on the site and the constraints. So it shows the access coming off Steers Lane with the main road running through the centre of the site and smaller cul-de-sac roads running off it, with the development parcels or residential parcels behind that. It shows the constraints on the site, so the main one being the Gatwick Airport noise contour running across here, beyond which dwellings are unacceptable in principle because of the noise situation. It also shows the preserved trees on the site, so around the boundaries and across the centre of the site. And finally, there is a public footpath that crosses the southeast corner, and that's shown as well. This plan also shows the various character areas that were identified. So we've got Steers Lane frontage and Balcombe Road frontage, where development needs to reflect the sylvan character of the surroundings, in particular with regard to the trees and the setback from the trees. And also we have, it shows development along the northwestern boundary, and then the red stars are focal points or buildings of interest to be incorporated into the design. So moving on to the submitted plans with the application. This first one is the presentation planning layout. So it's a layout plan which has been coloured up and showing the landscaping on the site, and from that you can get the broad features of the site and of the layout. So zooming into that in a bit more detail, you've got the main access which has been approved off Steers Lane, and that runs through the centre of the site. And then from that there are cul-de-sacs that then lead to the individual sections of the development. Along the northwestern boundary we've got 4 blocks of flats here, and we also have a block of flats in the southeast corner. The remainder of the development are houses, being detached, semi-detached and some terraces. The site also includes incorporation of the trees around the boundary and through the central section, and this part is to be retained and enhanced, and it's through here that there is additional landscaping and also play facilities. The supporting planning layout plan uses that base, but is more detailed. I'll just zoom in into that. So this has the dwellings marked on there. It shows the garden sizes and the parking arrangements for each plot. And we'll come back to this when we're looking at particular parts of the site. This plan shows the tenure layout. So the affordable housing is now in 5 broad areas of the site. We have a area of affordable housing which is in the yellow along the northwestern boundary. Previously, at the appeal stage, there were 5 blocks of affordable flats all along here, and also 16 houses all in this area that were to be affordable. That's now changed, so we have 2 blocks of affordable and 11 houses in this broad area. The remaining blocks are private units here. We have a new cluster of affordable housing in this part of the site, a new area here, and then in this part of the site we have affordable, but that has been redesigned in terms of its layout and also in terms of the design of the dwellings as well, to have regard to the noise environment. In terms of storey heights, in the main, the dwellings are 2-storey, so that's the red. Then in the pink are 3-storey units, 2.5 are the yellow. So the flats, these 4 blocks of flats here, they are 3-storey. This one in the southeast corner is 2-storey. And then we do have some 3-storey dwellings along the Boreham Road, and 2.5-storey ones, and that's to do with the noise mitigation. So that's a specific part of the design to deal with noise from Boreham Road. This is the open space plan. So that this is incorporated within the site and also immediately adjacent to it. We zoom in. So we have the central section where the preserved trees are. That's enhanced with landscaping, and that's to provide amenity green space and also some play facilities in the form of a sort of a trim trail or an action area for children to play through. There's also some amenity and natural green space around the boundaries of the site to complement the existing tree line. And then in this part of the site where the SUDS drainage features are, that's also going to be amenity space in terms of a path around the site and also landscaping. Then the area marked in purple, which is outside this application site, that is the outdoor sports facilities, and that's the subject of a separate application, and that's for the kickabout area, which is an informal area for sports. That arose as a result of the public inquiry at the appeal stage, and in the legal agreement they are required to make that application. So that's come in and it's running concurrently with this application. The final element of open space would be allotments. They're not provided on the site, but they are going to be covered by a financial contribution. And then this is the landscape master plan. So this shows the broad ideas for landscaping on the site. So that shows the position of the play facilities, and then the detail of that is picked up by the conditions and the legal agreement. It also shows tree planting through the site along the main street and within the various parcels and along the boundaries. And this plan also shows the kickabout area. I'll just zoom in on that. And also some additional planting to replace trees that are lost. And all of those elements will be tied together through the conditions and the legal agreement. But this shows the general approach to landscaping, and then the detailed plans with regard to the mix of planting, the number of trees and their species and their size. That will all be covered by the detailed landscaping drawings connected to the condition. Right, in terms of illustrative material, we have 3 perspectives. So this one is from the main entrance. So this is from Steers Lane, looking into the main street and looking through to the main part of the site and the entrance into the development. And then perspective number 2 is in the central area. So you can see the trees here with the landscaping, and in this part there's short sections of cul-de-sac leading to the dwellings either side of that green space. And then the third perspective is from the dwellings that would front onto Steers Lane, although they would be separated by landscaping areas, but that gives you a flavour of the type of housing. Then we have some street scenes. So this is the northwest. So this is the view from the sort of green area to the northwest. That's one of the block of flats. And then going the houses that then look over onto that green undeveloped area. Then this one is from the Balcombe Road. So this is from the houses next to the block of flats in the southeast tip, and so it's going from south to north. And you can see the 3-storey nature of the dwellings there, down to 2.5-storey. And then the next street scene goes along, so 3 stories with a gap for the road, and then some more 3 stories. And then 2 street scenes from along Steers Lane, just sort of short cul-de-sacs showing the dwellings, and you can get a general idea for the design and the materials, which is a mix of brick, tile hanging and cladding. And finally another one on Steers Lane. Just go back to the planning layout. Just want to focus on some particular parts of the site. In Balcombe Road, just zoom in on this bit. So the dwellings along Balcombe Road have been redesigned, and so this part has changed quite radically during the course of the application. So the dwellings now are a barrier in themselves and provide mitigation for the rest of the site. So in that regard, they're 3-storey in the main, and they also have a garage carport feature between them, which again helps to provide a continuous frontage. So if I zoom in on one of these, you'll see the dwelling is here, and then this is a carport arrangement here with a roof. So that then provides an element of screening and buffering to protect the gardens to the rear and the houses behind that and the rest of the site. I'll show you the floor plans of those units and explain the noise mitigation measures in a little bit more detail. And the other aspect to point out about this part of the site is this part of the site where we have a relationship between 3-storey units and 2-storey. And in the report, I've set out where in this part of the site it's not been possible to completely achieve the separation distance of 30 metres where you've got a 3-storey building. So it affects plots 91 to 94, and it's the relationship with plots 101 to 104. But in all other regards, the separation distances are met across the site. The plans have been amended and have been improved, but we do have just instances in this case where that isn't achieved, and that varies along here from 23 metre separation distance up to 29 metres, with the standard being 30, where 3 stories is involved. So if I go to the floor plans for those units. Right, so this is the 3-storey design. This is the front of the carport, and on the side elevation you can see that I'll just zoom in. So you've got the front of it, and then that's a section through the, if you like, the false roof. So as well as providing a barrier for noise, it also screens a private terrace area for this part of the for this room in the dwelling. And then if we go to the floor plans for those units. So you see at ground floor, you've got the carport with the door, the carport area behind it. Then at first floor level, you've got a balcony area with that window, which is protected by the roof. To the front here, which faces onto the Balcombe Road, at ground floor level, there is either a kitchen, WC, hall, so the sort of less sensitive rooms at this part of the site, with the living room, dining room to the rear. At first floor level, there is a living room there, but it also has this side window to allow for an outlook, a balcony area, and also ventilation. And then at second floor, we have bedroom 1, which does have windows facing onto Balcombe Road and a side window, but it also then has the window through to the wardrobe area to allow for 3 aspect outlook, but also for ventilation as well. Because of on those particular plots, 101 to 104, we were concerned about the separation distances. It is this window that would be obscure glazed, but for bedroom 2, there isn't another alternative position that could go, and it wouldn't be suitable for that to be obscure glazed. But on balance, we felt that that was a suitable arrangement. Looking at a different house type, this is the Granger. So this is a semi-detached style house with the carport arrangement to the side. And then the floor plans of those. So at ground floor, it's the hall and the stairs with kitchen and dining to the rear. At first floor, facing onto Balcombe Road, it's the staircase and the bathroom. There is a bedroom window on the side elevation, and this is one where the window is slightly recessed and the window opening is controlled. So again, that deflects noise. And then at second floor, we have a bathroom and the landing area, so no sensitive rooms facing onto Balcombe Road, and then 2 bedrooms here. With these units, there isn't a window-to-window relationship with the houses at the back, so there's no need for obscure glazing in this regard. And then similarly with Lardner. Again, a 3-storey townhouse type of design with the carport area and the roof. Look at those floor plans, very similar. They've got the side balcony area, and again utilising either circulation space or bathrooms or corridors, etc., to the front. And then finally the 2.5-storey design, which is the Dexter. So you can see that. So it's got dormer windows in the roof space. It's got the carport roof to provide for the barrier. And then in terms of the floor area, we have got a living room which has windows front and back. So whilst there is a living room window facing onto Balcombe Road, it's a dual aspect room, which then gives a double outlook and also allows for ventilation. And then at first floor, you've got an ensuite, bathrooms and a dressing room, so the less sensitive rooms facing onto Balcombe Road. And then in terms of the rooms in the roof space, second floor for that one, facing onto Balcombe Road is a bathroom and the bedrooms face away. So in this regard, the dwellings along this part of the site have been specifically designed to deal with the noise environment, with bespoke design and bespoke layouts to deal with the specifics of the acoustics in this part of the site, which is a combination of aircraft noise and also road noise. Turning to another part of the site, it's the relationship between the flats. So in this regard, just to draw to your attention, blocks 1 and 2, which is actually one building joined together, and the relationship with block 4. In this aspect, it was this relationship from here to here which was 19 metres, so didn't achieve the 30 metres that the guidance would require. But in this instance, the arrangement of the units in block 2 are such that there wouldn't be a habitable room window to habitable room window situation or direct viewing. So if I go to those drawings, so it's this part of the site here. So it's flats in this part of the site with their main outlook looking across to the west with their balconies, and it's these windows here which are secondary windows to living room and dining room. At ground floor level we do have a bedroom here, but the reciprocal relationship with the block in block 4 is that there isn't a habitable room window, so the relationship is suitable there. So I'll just show that now. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so it's these windows here. And it's these windows here with the main outlook to that area. Block 3, which is the block in the southeast corner. This is just to show you that the detailing of that block and where it, zoom in on it, where it faces onto Balcombe Road, there is minimal openings in order to address the noise situation. If I just go over to the location plan or layout plan. So it's this elevation here, where you've got the combination of Balcombe Road and Steers Lane, that's where there's minimal openings to protect occupants from noise. And then finally, with regard to the block of flats, blocks 5 to 6. So if I just go to the layout, zoom in on that a bit more. So block 5 here and 6. Previously block 5 was closer towards 6, and there was concern about the separation distance. Now this block has been moved over closer to the central area to give a wider gap between the two, albeit it's 27 metres, so not quite at the 30. But in that regard, we felt that that was a suitable arrangement between the two, and this is the frontage area with parking, and there would be landscaping as well. And there was initial concerns about the relationship of this block with these units here, because this separation distance was 15 metres. But in that regard, there are secondary windows along this elevation, and they would be obscure glazed in the lower panes, so to prevent a direct window to window relationship. And also these units, their outlook is to the front and to the rear. So I'll show you those. So at ground floor level, there's carport area of that block, but that unit has these obscure windows here. Zoom in a bit more, for the kitchen and dining and living room, but the main outlook is to the front, which is where its balcony is. And then at first floor and second floor repeated, you can see the two flats, so one facing that way and one facing that way. Well, there are the windows, but they would be obscure glazed at the lower level to protect the amenities of the occupiers of the dwellings nearby. Then block 6, which is in the northeast corner. Just go over to there. So this again has been redesigned to deal with the noise environment. So in terms of its position, the actual layout, so it's quite an unusual shape, being sort of an S shape, and also to the layout inside, so that these sensitive facades here don't contain habitable room windows, and they're mainly communal areas and corridors. So if I zoom in on that. So it was this elevation where it fronts onto Balcombe Road. So we've got lobby area, stairwell, corridor, and then those units then face either north or face to the west. In terms of an update, the conditions are printed in the agenda, but since printing that, there have been a couple of changes required. So these are marked in red. Condition 3, which relates to the solar panels or other renewables, that's just been revised slightly to state that any alterations would need to be approved by the local planning authority, and also to add in the reason for the condition to ensure the safe operation of Gatwick Airport, and that's been requested by the airport to be added in. Condition 5 has just been clarified, so it relates to, which is relating to the obscure glazing and the protection of privacy. So it's just been a little bit more explicit and referring to the particular plot numbers to be specific in that regard. And then a new condition, condition 7, which relates to the boundaries of the garden boundaries of the dwellings, in particular those along the Balcombe Road, because there is a bit of an anomaly with the plans as submitted, so that it's much more straightforward. I'll show you that on the layout plan a little bit, but that's just to refer to that arrangement. And then in the informatives, just additional clarification about the crane requirements, and that's been specifically requested by Gatwick. So going back to the boundary condition that I just mentioned, I'll just show you on here. Just get into that part of the site. Yeah, the previous version to this had the boundaries not quite aligning with the boundaries of the properties, so that has been regularised now and is much more straightforward. So it's to just refer to that to be the approved plan for the boundary treatment. Just go back to the layout plan. As set out in the report, and as I mentioned at the beginning, the principle for the development of this site has been established at outline stage. It's an allocated site in the local plan, and it would provide for housing, including affordable housing and low cost housing. The scheme has been significantly revised since the appeal, and through pre-app discussions and during the course of this application. and the layout has evolved. The mix, including the affordable housing mix, has been improved. The designs of the units have changed. In particular, the units facing onto Balcombe Road are been designed specifically for this site. Garden areas have been improved and landscaping has been enhanced. The officer's view is that the application is acceptable and would provide for a high quality development. The recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions as set out in the agenda and as I have revised in this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cheeseman, very comprehensive. Before we start consideration of the matter, can I just please go to our Democratic Services Officer for a moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I forgot to mention that in addition to the Planning Committee members who are present at the meeting this evening, we also have Councillor Burrett. He's present at the meeting but has no speaking rights or voting rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have received one written representation from a member of the public. Can I please ask our Democratic Services Officer to read the statement? Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a statement from the applicant Bellway Homes. Dear members, thank you for the opportunity to provide this statement in support of our reserved matters application at land positioned to the north of Steers Lane and to the west of Balcombe Road. Firstly, we would like to thank officers for their report and their positive recommendation, which we fully support. Bellway Homes is one of a small number of five-star house builders in the UK and has a proven track record for delivering high-quality design-led schemes. The proposed scheme will provide new housing within the borough, and the proposal was amended following discussions with the Housing Enabling and Development Officer to provide a range of 74 affordable homes to help meet local needs. As you will be aware, the principle of development has been established by the Outline Planning Commission, and in proposing the detail of the development, the applicant has taken a design-led approach which followed a detailed analysis of the site and the surrounding area. The process began with pre-application discussions with your officers, with a series of design workshops and meetings. Once submitted, the application was also amended with a series of improvements in response to comments raised by officers and stakeholders. The guidance and advice from officers helped evolve the scheme, particularly in regard to ensuring good pedestrian connections with the site, urban design, housing mix and access to green spaces within the scheme. The applicants are pleased that the key statutory consultees are supportive of the application, and there has also been limited public comments submitted on the application. The final scheme before you this evening will provide a new neighbourhood which responds positively to the surrounding vernacular as well as contributing to the council's housing supply. The final scheme includes a number of key benefits for the site and surrounding area, including a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed affordable houses and apartments, including 52 new affordable rent homes and 22 shared ownership homes to meet local needs in accordance with the advice of the Housing Enabling and Development Officer. The affordable homes will be built of the same quality as the market homes, ensuring a tenure-blind development. A mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed market homes, including apartments and houses. Native tree and shrub planting provided along site boundaries and within open spaces, resulting in biodiversity benefits. Children's play equipment and informal nature/adventure walk. Homes will be constructed with solar panels, leading to a reduction of at least 10% in carbon dioxide emissions across the site. And finally, vehicle parking provided site-wide in accordance with the adopted standards. The proposals have been thoroughly tested and consulted, and we are pleased that officers at the council and their independent technical advisors have endorsed our assessments, leading to a very positive and well-balanced officer report with a recommendation for approval. We are committed to the development of the site to provide the borough with much needed housing, and the necessary funding and construction teams in place to start works as soon as possible. We therefore respectfully request that the application be approved in accordance with your office's recommendation. That's the end of the statement, and there are no further statements on this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The process for considering applications will be as per usual, but for people watching to help them understand. Committee members wishing to speak should turn on their cameras. You will then be invited to speak one by one. When you're called on, please unmute your microphone and check that your screen is surrounded by a red box before speaking. Please turn off your camera and microphone when you're finished and no longer live. Once all committee members that wish to speak have done so, the planning officers will respond to any queries. We'll now begin consideration of the application. Please turn on your camera if you wish to speak, and since I'm already speaking, I might as well kick off. I think just a couple of things. The first one is, could the planning officer please confirm that we've had a change of developer since the last application. The last application for this site was seen by the committee, and the committee was very unhappy about it and rejected it unanimously, I believe. It subsequently went to appeal at the planning inspector, and the planning inspector unfortunately disagreed with the committee and upheld the application and gave outline planning permission. But since that time, again, as I said, it's my understanding we've had a change of developer and a change of attitude. So some comments on there might be useful. My second question is around the noise mitigation design of the buildings, particularly on the Balcombe Road side, but also along the edge facing Gatwick. We've seen a number of schemes with noise mitigation design for housing come to us over the last few months, including the council's own scheme for Breezehurst Drive. I was just wondering whether the planning officer could comment whether the standards of those properties and the noise mitigation details we're seeing, you know, are as good as the ones that we're putting into our own developments. And finally, a question about the kickabout area, which I can see was required from the legal agreement that came out of the outline planning, an obligation on the developer to submit that application. It's just what functions or what capability do we have to hold them to delivering the kickabout area as against just putting in the application. Those are my points, so thank you very much for bearing with me, members. Over to other members of the committee. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Ms. I remember very clearly this application coming to committee, and we had two major reservations about it. One was the fact that the affordable housing had been put along the Balcombe Road in the noisy area, and secondly that we felt it was too overcrowded, too dense a number of units for the size of the site. And I thank Val for her presentation, but I think it's clearly demonstrated that view after view shows very convoluted design, blank walls everywhere, and esoteric lengths gone to try and mitigate the sounds from the noise from the Balcombe Road. I'm not quite sure how these sort of artificial roofs on garages that aren't there is going to be part of that sound prevention. It appears to me that the sound will just go through those gaps. But to me, it does confirm that this site is crammed full, and it really should have less units in it. Having said that, however, we have no options based on the planning inspector's judgment and findings, which, needless to say, I don't agree with. And we have to go with it. So given that, although we see again distances not being met between the different blocks, we have little choice really, given the effort that the applicant has gone to fit it all in and try and comply with policies. The question I have is really around 5.75 sustainability. I see the proposals are to put gas boilers in there. Now, we all know that we're supposed to be get the use of gas out. I forget the date, but it's not very long away. And I'm very surprised to see a large development like this still relying on gas boilers. And I also, it's a favourite hobby horse of mine, that the conditions or the findings around the use of solar panels seem to me to be extremely complicated. And I really don't understand why we don't just have a requirement for solar panels on every building that can actually take them, every south-facing or nearly south-facing building. And I'd like to ask the officers if they could perhaps clarify that. I do recognise there are issues potentially being so close to the flight path and glare, etc., but we should be requiring maximum solar panels at this day and age, even if the buildings don't actually need them. They can feed back into the grid. That's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pickett.
Thank you very much. I was very pleased to hear that allotments, some land is being set aside for allotments. How many plots is it intended that that amount of land will produce?
Thank you. Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. I find myself agreeing with Councillor Smith, and in fact I've got a whole page of notes and he's covered many of them. I think a lot of the designs of these properties are all over the place. Some very, very strange room shapes as well. Looking at the plans for the Granger, has two single beds with toe to toe. I mean, that's just really a bizarre sort of layout for a bedroom with two single beds in it. The sitting room on that one is, again, very small. It's so that they can be squashed in, the room configurations can be squashed in. Bit concerned, I don't know what the density is. I couldn't find that information anywhere, and I'd quite like to know what the density is. But as I say, it's a little bit higgledy-piggledy. The Lardner property, you showed a patio door out of a balcony from the bedroom onto a terrace. Is that the only form of ventilation in that room? Are doors, or are there any windows as well? Because, you know, sleeping at night with a very sort of large balcony there, I'm not sure how safe that would be if you have your windows wide open, sleep with your windows open as I do, if it is just a patio door onto a balcony, which as Councillor Smith said, I don't quite see how that is going to mitigate any noise issues from the Balcombe Road. I'm really pleased to see that the gardens have been realigned in plots 101 to 104, because as you know, that was a big concern of mine, particularly with balconies overlooking other people's gardens. One of the questions that I have on here was looking at the distance from block 1 to plot 119 and 120. You talked about the distance between the two blocks of apartments there, but block 1 is flats and it overlooks some little houses, I think, and they do look to be very close together. So could you confirm whether the distances there are adequate, and whether the windows that are in that face, which it may just be a kitchen window, it may not, because it's very confusing with the number of plans we've got. Could you just confirm whether those are also going to be obscured glass overlooking these gardens, because we do seem to be increasingly having properties with brick faces or with windows with obscured glass, windows which don't open, and it just seems to me that we're cramming more and more in, trying to fit them in, and they're making compromises for the people who are going to be living there, and they're not going to be very comfortable or you know, nice places to live generally. I, you know, disappointed also with the PV panels and the boiler situation as well. I think that's all of my things. Thank you.
Councillor Ascough.
Thank you. My questions regard standards. Obviously, we understood, and thank you very much for the presentation, that certain standards haven't been met now, and there's been mitigations to deal with that. What I don't understand is why have we accepted taking away these standards as such, or reducing them to actually facilitate these households? My understanding would be that we have standards for a reason, and if we are not following certain standards, which must be, I'm guessing, minimums normally, and now we're sort of finding ways around to sort of like avoid those minimums so that we can fit as more properties in. I want to understand why we are disregarding those standards in many respects of this application and others.
Councillor Hart.
Thank you. It's just a very, very quick question regarding the play areas and the kickabout areas. Are they going to be purely grassed over areas, or are they going to be having any play construction areas, or equipment? Thank you.
Councillor Belbin.
Thank you. Yes, in line with the previous speakers, I'm concerned about the cram it in, as there seems to be in corner cutting on certain aspects, which Mrs. Cheeseman raised a few. One which I don't think got mentioned, I apologise if I missed it, was on the question of the flat balconies where it's not up to the required space, but we normally require, and there is a comment in 5.42 that this is subject to a condition and will be reviewed as and when it is, at the next stage. I was just wondering what would happen. Firstly, what would happen if what was put in was not acceptable. And our density, by the way, Councillor Jaggard, is 33.6. And the only other thing I was going to ask, just for clarification, I believe, according to 0.5.3, which is a follow-up from the inspector's approval in inverted commas, we can't actually object to the number of items, number of units that are here, because possibly, I think everyone would agree, there's possibly slightly too many, but we can only object on other things like design and layout, etc. Thank you.
Councillor Mughali.
Thank you. My concern is it looks like there's a compromise with some houses having substandard garden sizes and some having sub-optimal window-to-window distances and some not quite reaching the standard for noise levels, meaning that some habitable rooms have obscure glazing and some have windows that don't open. The concern here is that we might be deviating from the standards. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Irvine, I think you were here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. But I think we all have some concerns about this. My concern is that, having looked at the tenure layout, it just seems to me that the affordable housing will be in place, or virtually will be in place in the areas where noise mitigation is required, and I sincerely hope that's accident rather than design. It would seem to me unfair if affordable housing was used as a way of mitigating the noise effects for the houses that were required to be sold, because I don't make a differentiation between private or public housing. They're all just homes, but obviously developers might have other ideas. So, perhaps the planning officer could reassure us on that. But the second thing is that the planning inspector has made it quite clear that he expects this this site to be able to accommodate 185 dwellings, and I believe that's the number which is being put forward. So if we didn't have 185 dwellings in the form in which they are at the moment, what would be the alternative? The alternative could be something far, far worse. So yeah, it's a difficult decision to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any more cameras at the moment, so if we could go back to Mrs. Cheeseman, could you respond to those points, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll deal with them all in order because that's the way I've written them down. It'll be easier. Yes, in terms of the applicant, at the outline stage, it was a company called Dainscroft. Since the appeal, the site has been sold and it's now owned by Bellway Homes. So they've done the pre-app discussions, they've made the application, and that's who we've been negotiating with on this application. In terms of the noise mitigation along Balcombe Road and also to the north, it's a combination of airport noise, which would be from the potential second runway, southern runway, and also the combination of then road noise, and in particular Balcombe Road, and that's how those two combine together that then gives the sort of noise contours for the site, and then the layout of the site with the dwellings as designed then give a sort of protection around those boundaries of the site. In relation to the kickabout area, yeah, the legal agreement requires the application to be submitted, but then also it has to be delivered, and one of the clauses within the legal agreement is not to cause or to permit occupation of the development unless and until the kickabout space has been laid out and constructed and is ready for use. And then there's also details about how it's maintained and managed. So it's not just about the application, it's actually about the delivery of it as well. So that's covered in the legal agreement. Okay. With regard to the affordable housing and concerns about that being all along the Balcombe Road, if I go to one of the layout plans. Bear with me, I'll just call that up. Hopefully you're seeing that now. Right, okay, in regard to the affordable housing and where that's located, so on this plan the affordable is in yellow. So now we have a group of affordable at this point and down in the corner, but these are private dwellings here, and these two block of flats are also private. So before we had a whole line along here that was affordable, and there was more affordable along here, so it has been broken up, and also we have more of a mixture of houses now and flats. Before we had a disproportionate amount of flats as well, which was of concern. With regard to the questions about sustainability, yeah, the point about the gas boilers are noted, but at the moment that isn't in our policy. to move away from that. So the overall energy proposals that are being put forward have been considered and are considered to comply with the policy, being a mixture of measures, and then that leads into the PV panels. The policy doesn't have a blanket requirement to them to be on all units, because it's for the developer to choose what mixture of measures he's going to introduce in order to get the required energy savings and carbon reductions. So it can be a mixture of various technologies or measures, or the sort of fabric first approach, or add-on renewables. So each case is dealt with separately, and they're all dealt with individually. The question about allotments, there aren't going to be any allotments on this site, but the provision of allotments is covered by a contribution, and that was agreed at the appeal, and that's included within the legal agreement. So they would need to make a contribution of just over nearly £21,000 towards allotments, and then that would go towards facilities within the borough that the council could provide. Turning now to the issues about the various units. Yes, some of the units are unusual, if you like, and have different room shapes, but that has really arisen from the specific nature of those units, and how they're laid out. And we specifically asked the developers to look at different ways of addressing that issue with regard to having no habitable rooms facing Balcombe Road, for example, and so that's as a result of that. There's a question about the Lardner. If I go to that plan. Hopefully that's on there. Yeah, so that bedroom there has a balcony area and also a window there, and in terms of ventilation, the noise mitigation and ventilation are sort of linked together, and so as part of the conditions discharge for noise, it covers the noise situation within the dwellings, but also overheating reports are submitted, so they go hand in hand really, and they deal with basically summer overheating and measures that would need to be employed to address that, particularly if in the noise situation windows can't be opened, but all of that has been looked at by Environmental Health, and they are satisfied with the approach that's been adopted, and that there's a mixture of measures within the dwellings to provide suitable living accommodation and sort of living environment. There was a question about block 119. Block 1, I think that was. Yeah. So it's this relationship onto this elevation. Yeah, the distance is 14.5 metres, but there's just a kitchen window in this elevation. So not a habitable room, and no other window. So no habitable room window to habitable room window situation in that regard, which is where the 30 metres comes from. With regard to the question about standards not being met and why are they being reduced, in terms of actual standards that need to be complied with, that is the space standards, the nationally described space standards, and that refers to the internal floor spaces of the dwellings, and in that regard the dwellings meet those standards. In terms of garden sizes and separation distances, they're set out in the urban design SPD, supplementary planning document, so that is guidance, not policy. So we can't insist upon it, but we try and ensure that it's provided that or they're met where possible. And I think in this regard, on this development, in the main they are met, but there are some instances where that can't be done, and then it comes down to the planning balance and looking at overall the benefits of the application, the provision of housing, provision of affordable housing and low cost housing, and the degree of harm that is caused by any non-compliance with that guidance, and that applies on this site, and applies on lots of other sites, and we will find that as more and more of these harder sites come forward where there are constraints on the site, and you have to balance that against the strong need to provide housing within the borough. Turning to the question about play areas and the kickabout space. The kickabout space is just to be a grassed area. It won't be a formal court or pitch, because there are going to be a number of those on the Forge Wood development itself, but it will be a grassed area that can be used for team sports and also picnicking or any other activity or informal activities, and that was a specific requirement that came about through discussions with policy and also amenity services, of that would be something that is needed within the locality. But the play areas, I'll just move across on the layout. So that's sort of within this central area. Yes, they would need to provide some equipment. That's covered by a condition in the legal a condition and the legal agreement. So the precise details about the equipment would be need to be submitted and agreed, and we would liaise with amenity services in that regard. So there would be pieces of equipment for children to play on, but it's more in the form of like a trim trail or a nature trail, as opposed to a enclosed traditional play area with a set layout of pieces of equipment. There was a question about balconies. Yes, we were suggesting a condition there because we need to know the details of the balconies anyway, and also to clarify their size, because there was a need to make sure that the design of the balconies was consistent within the blocks of flats themselves, rather than being different designs on different sizes on different floors potentially. But I think the other thing I would say is, I'll just go to a different plane. Yeah, with regard to the blocks of flats, they are in a sort of landscape setting. There is open space, close by on this site, on the adjacent land, and also within Forge Wood, the main part of Forge Wood, and that's an approach we've adopted on Forge Wood itself, whereas I think other than only a few blocks, those flats don't have balconies. So even if they didn't, if the balconies on this site didn't completely meet the standards, I think that there would be sufficient amenity space and outdoor areas and settings for those occupants to provide a suitable living environment. In terms of the question about number of units, yes, I think that the inspector felt that 185 units could fit on the site, and so that really can't be debated any further. It's really looking at the detail of the proposals. Those are the areas that we can look at now. Yeah, another question about garden sizes. I think on garden sizes, in the main, other than I think it's 5 units, the garden sizes are met. If I just go to a plan for that one. And on that one, throughout the application, we have been pressing the developers to improve the situation, and each time it has got better. So there are just the ones coloured green for the houses meet the standards. So we've got 1 unit over here where it hasn't been possible to meet the standard, and then there's these units here where again that hasn't been possible, but other than that the units do meet the standard and have been adjusted a number of times in order to meet it for more properties. In terms of noise levels, the Environmental Health felt that the bespoke design had addressed the concerns. The garden areas were protected and so met the noise standard, and there were just 4 instances where there was an exceedance of noise on 4 rooms across the development, and the Environmental Health Officer felt that overall that was something that we had taken that as far as we could, and that overall the design was suitable and had met the requirements of what we were asking them to do, and also to view that in the situation of aircraft noise falling and also road noise falling, and so the likelihood was that in the future site wouldn't be as noisy, and noise levels would decrease. Yeah, there's a question about affordable housing and noise levels. And concerned that yeah, the affordable housing was all in the noisiest areas, and that was certainly an issue last time with the outline application. I think in terms of this application, because the affordable housing has been redistributed around the site, that's not the case now. So along the Balcombe Road, it's the yellow that's affordable. So we do have dwellings that are private that face onto the Balcombe Road where it's noisy, and in particular this part of the site where it's noisy because you've got Balcombe Road and the aircraft boundary contour rather, these are private. So we've moved away from a situation where it was predominantly the affordable units that were in the noisiest parts of the site, and so I think there's more of an even distribution for the various tenures in relation to noise. And I think I've possibly covered everything, but if not, come back to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any further questions or comments, particularly pertaining to the feedback, or was there anything that was missed? If members of the committee would like to comment or ask further questions, please turn your cameras on now. Okay, I can't see any cameras coming on, so thank you very much, Mrs. Cheeseman, for the additional information. All members of the committee having had an opportunity to speak, we will move on to the vote. I will be asking the Democratic Service Officer to conduct a recorded vote on this matter on my behalf. Members of the committee will be called upon to vote in alphabetical order. Once you're live, please state whether you are for or against the recommendation, or if you abstain. The recommendation is to permit, subject to the conditions and the revised conditions set out tonight, and the informatives set out in the report. I will be moving the recommendation, and I will be asking Councillor Hart, the Vice Chair of the Planning Committee, to second the recommendation. This is so that we can have an orderly vote, and it does not mean that by moving or seconding we are indicating that whether we support this recommendation or not. So I formally move the recommendation to permit. Could I please ask the Vice Chair to second? Thank you.
I second the motion.
Thank you very much. Would the Democratic Services Officer please conduct the vote?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a recorded vote being taken on agenda item 5. Committee members are asked to vote for or against the recommendation before them, or by way of abstention. Please ensure that your video feed is live before declaring your vote. Councillor Ascough.
Against.
Councillor Belbin.
For.
Councillor Hart. Councillor Irvine.
For.
Councillor Jaggard.
Reluctantly for.
Councillor Mugale.
Against.
Councillor Pickett.
I'm for.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Rana.
For.
And Councillor Smith.
We've been forced into a position where we have no option, I think, so reluctantly for.
Thank you. So that is 8 votes for and 2 votes against the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much. Application number CR 2020-0584 ARM, Steers Lane, Pound Hill, Crawley, has been permitted, subject to the conditions set out in the report as revised this evening, and also subject to the informatives set out in report PS 361A. We'll now turn our attention to agenda item 6, application number CR 2020-0719 full, a Vanguard House and Victory House, Churchill Court, Northgate, Crawley. Can I please ask the Group Development Manager to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I've got the plans for item 6. Okay, so item 6, agenda item 6 is for the erection of 2 commercial buildings at Vanguard and Victory House, Churchill Court, Northgate, Crawley. Just starting with a report update, we haven't had any late representations since the report was prepared. However, we have got one amendment to condition 9 in as since the report has been published. We have realised that there's sufficient information to reword it and condition the drainage maintenance and management plan as per the information already submitted to us. So condition 9 now reads that the development hereby permitted shall be implemented and thereafter maintained in accordance with the drainage maintenance and management plan dated October 2020, contained within Annex 1 of the flood risk assessment submitted with the application, and the reason is set out in the agenda paper. So, turning to the application itself then, the plan on screen is the site location plan. The application site is on the western side of Gatwick Road and south of the main Manor Royal, at the, just southwest of where the 2 roads meet at the roundabout. The site, as you can see, is currently occupied by 2 office blocks, Victory House, which is closest to Gatwick Road and Manor Royal, and Vanguard House, which sits in the southwest corner. These are 2-storey buildings with access and parking, and you'll see that there is a further office, Valiant House, which is outside of the application site, but was originally developed at the same time. It's to be noted that prior approval has been granted for demolition of Victory House and Vanguard House, and that demolition works is already being carried out under the conditions and requirements of the prior approval. I'll just show you the site in context. Some photographs to familiarise yourself with the site location. So where my cursor is now, this is the approach showing the side of Victory House as you approach towards Gatwick Road in the roundabout. The next one is of Victory House as you look at it from the Manor Royal entrance. The lower slide is showing Victory House and its relationship and frontage onto Manor Royal, and you've got the roundabout on the far left-hand side. And again, another view of Victory House from the roundabout. You'll see that there are a number of trees along the frontage. The ones along the Manor Royal frontage are protected trees, and the area along here and along the Gatwick Road frontage is defined as structural landscaping in the local plan. Just a few more photographs from within the site. So this is Vanguard House, which is the office in the southwest corner of the site, further in, so not so visible from the road. The photograph here shows Victory House, Vanguard House in the very background, and Valiant House, which is not being redeveloped, in the centre of the photograph. And the final photograph I wanted to highlight was just a picture showing the relationship to the site boundary. This is the southern site boundary. So you can see that there's a considerable area of parking and fencing, and the 2 offices sit away from that site boundary. So you've got Victory House closest to Gatwick Road nearest, and Vanguard House to the rear. So turning to the proposal, I'll just load up the layout plan. So the application is for the erection of 2 commercial buildings following the demolition of both Victory and Vanguard House. So there are 2 commercial units, Unit 100, which is the larger one of the 2, situated over where Victory House currently sits. This is proposed to be for Class B8 use, which is storage and distribution. And then in the other corner, you've got Unit 200, which is the applicants are seeking a variety of uses for this, either B8, which is storage and distribution, or B2, which is general industrial, or EG3, which is the new office use class. So all commercial use, but a difference, a potential difference in uses in the smaller unit, and that's relevant when we come on to look at the parking considerations for the application. Access to the development will be from the existing access in and off Manor Royal. And as you can see from the application, you've got the preserved trees along the frontage to Manor Royal, and then landscaping is proposed around the key road edges, which is actually a requirement of the Manor Royal SPD. The yellow shaded car parking area at the northern end of the site will be distributed between the 2 units. So depending on the eventual use of Unit 200, a number of those spaces will be allocated to Unit 200, depending on the ultimate use class of that. And I'll explain that when I show the parking layouts later. So I say fairly simple layout and not really altering the arrangements either, onto the highway, not altering the parking arrangements for the adjoining property to the west. And as I say, two buildings broadly in the same location as previous, although obviously much closer to the site boundaries to the south. So I'll show you the elevations now. So this is a CGI image, which I think is better than the elevations in this case, just to give a feel for the unit. So as I say, this is the unit that could either be an office unit, a warehouse unit, or a general industrial unit. And it's a fairly simple clad design. The variety of cladding to sort of mix up the elevations, and this front part of the building has a glaze area at ground floor and an ancillary office area on a mezzanine at first floor level. So this is the lesser of the 2 units in terms of its visibility because it's at the back of the site. I'll just show you the other unit, Unit 1. Okay, and this is the CGI for Unit 1, looking at it across the roundabout actually, so sort of standing there facing southwest. Again, this is this is the storage and distribution unit, obviously a much larger scale building. The area in the black and dark cladding is the storage area, and then a glazed, a smaller scale facade along the Manor Road frontage, with the upper floor being the ancillary office space for the unit. So again, applicants have sought to articulate the building with a mixture of cladding styles, orientating it in different directions, adding glazing to break up the massing of what could potentially be quite a plain building to make it of some visual interest. It's a fairly, a modern design. And so this is the view from the key road frontages, Gatwick Road on the left, Manor Royal on the front, and the main loading doors and loading bay you'll see from the photographs or the drawings to come is situated within the site on the other side of the building. So the planning history and the relevant policies which relate to this application are set out in the officer's report. And as you'll see, the principle of development, while office space would be lost, there would be a small net increase in business floor space for these new buildings. And the more recent local plan evidence identifies that there is a significant need for new employment space, especially in the storage and distribution sector, which this large unit in particular would address this need. So it's employment use in an employment area which is supported in local plan policy terms. So in respect to the design and visual impact, obviously you can see building 100, which is the bigger building, occupies a prominent location at the junction of main primary roads of Gatwick Road and Manor Royal. And as you'll see, there is space retained around the edge of the site for landscaping, to soften the edge and as a sort of planting buffer as required by the Manor Royal SPD. The building is also well articulated, or it's considered to be well articulated, with the sort of active frontage for the offices and the glazing facing onto the Manor Royal route. As I've said, the design is a mixture of materials with the glazing to sort of lighten and break up the frontage and provide an active frontage. And you'll see from the report that officers recommend conditions to ensure the materials and detailing are high quality and respond positively to this prominent corner. Officers consider this new building would be a positive addition to the corner, replacing a somewhat outdated office building with more modern commercial space. And you'll also see from the officer report that the new buildings are able to meet the local plan sustainability requirements, and indeed I think have photovoltaics as part of the design. So now talk briefly about the parking arrangements, which are a little bit complicated. Okay. So this plan shows the parking arrangements if both units were to be taken up as B8 storage uses. So for unit 100, which is always a B8 storage use, as you say, that we've seen the front from the CGI facing Manor Royal and Gatwick Road, and you'll see that towards the west side of the building, which is less conspicuous, you've got all the loading lorry bays and loading areas and service yard for the main building. This unit has a requirement for 60 parking spaces, 12 lorry parking spaces and 18 cycle spaces. So if you can see in the layout here, in terms of its provision and all the layouts I'm about to show you, the parking standards are fully met for car parking. That they're over provided with cycle spaces for both the units. And in both the lorry parking provision is slightly under, but this slight deficit is not considered to warrant a refusal in this case. It's really a matter for the operator to decide whether or not there's sufficient lorry loading doors or and parking for its business operation. So this is the situation if we have a B8 use on both parts of the site. So as I say, for unit 100, it's 60 spaces, and if for unit 200, for this, in this scenario, it needs 17 parking spaces, lorry spaces, 4 lorry spaces, and I think it's 15 cycle spaces. I've lost my place on my note, but it's got adequate cycle spaces. So the two extra car parking spaces would be accommodated in or allocated from the 39 in the front car park. As you'll see, the layout starts to change a bit as the uses switch over. So this is the scenario where it's a B8 use in unit 100 and a B2 general industrial in unit 200. And this has a total requirement for 43 parking spaces for unit 200. So it's put 15 in its car park, further 13 in its service yard, and the swept paths and things have been checked for this with West Sussex, and this arrangement does work. And then the balance of that is 15 units, 15 spaces out of the 39 in the front car park. And the net result of that is that additional parking's been provided for unit 100 in its service yard. And again, these swept paths have been checked. And this is the office layout. So again, unit 100 is the warehouse unit. Unit 200 in this scenario would be an office unit, so actually doesn't require any office or light industrial. Doesn't technically require any lorry spaces, but is still shown as having some provision. Requires for 54 parking spaces, so it's 15 in its car park, 13 in its lorry area, 26 in the front car park, which again meets all the standards, but again the increased amount of parking having to be provided in the unit 100 car park, and some of these spaces are a little bit tight, but again I don't think that the slight deficit is a reason for refusal in this case. This is a matter we believe for the operators to resolve. So there's a condition recommended to fix the car park layout between the buildings prior to first occupation, so that the parking and servicing arrangements are clear between the two units, which could be in separate occupation, and also for the local authority to ensure that the operational requirements for the site are met. So turning to the landscaping again. As I've said, there's protected trees along the boundary which are being retained. There's new park planting and landscaping around the site, replacing some of the trees that need to be removed from within the site to accommodate the new buildings and the new layouts. And planting as per the requirements in the Manor Royal SPD along the buffer zone, which is, say, it's got quite a depth. The building comes a little bit close in places, but again, given the sort of stepped appearance and the attempt the applicants have made to sort of break up the visual interest of this unit, we think that this sort of stepped arrangement is acceptable in this particular case. And as I say, there is a requirement for more than a 1-for-1 tree replacement on this site, given the standards in CH6. So the applicants are actually taking out more trees and planting more trees than they're taking out. And then there's still a deficit of 10 trees, which would be sought or payment in lieu for 10 of those trees to be provided off site through a Section 106 agreement. So overall, we consider that the landscaping and planting is considered adequate for the site. The applicants have considered things like refuse, cycle parking, and as they have worked through the potential scenarios for the different use class scenarios that they want with the flexible permission for unit 200. In respect of other matters, it's considered that all the technical constraints for this this site in relation to air quality, drainage, contaminated land are all addressed in the report and can be controlled via the conditions as set out in the report. So in conclusion, it's considered that this redevelopment of a site is considered to have a positive economic impact. The design and landscaping are considered to be appropriate, and it has an acceptable impact in terms of air quality, trees, traffic, drainage, and these can all be addressed. So the recommendation is for planning permission, subject to the conditions, the completion of the legal agreement, and the variation to condition 9 as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. McPherson. There's been one statement submitted regarding this item. Could I please ask the Democratic Services Officer to read that statement? Thank you.
Thank you. Statement has been provided by the Agent Quad on behalf of the applicant. Vanguard House and Victory House, located at Churchill Court within Manor Royal, are two run-down and tired office buildings which have historically been plagued by multiple long vacancy periods. These buildings will be demolished in the coming days, and this application will provide two high-quality commercial buildings which will ensure the site is not only brought back into active use, but remains occupied and act as an exemplar development in Manor Royal for the long term. The mix of uses proposed across the site are fully policy compliant, receive full backing from the Manor Royal bid, and will greatly assist in addressing the market demand for Class B2 and B8 uses in particular, which have seen a huge surge in demand in the past few years. The client has shown a strong appetite to bring the site forward in the shortest possible time frame. This should be seen as nothing but a genuinely deliverable development which will show strong private sector investor confidence in Manor Royal and create up to 210 full-time jobs. Other economic benefits include the creation of 75 construction jobs throughout the construction period, the generation of approximately £440,000 per year in employee spending in the local area, over £11 million in gross value added, a business rate revenue of £300,000 for Crawley Borough Council, private sector investment of over £19 million. These are elements which should be afforded significant weight in this present time. Outside of the economic benefits, the scheme has very strong environmental benefits. The buildings will both achieve BREEAM Excellent ratings in regard to energy and water and will include solar panels. There will also be a number of electric vehicle charging spaces in the car park. Furthermore, the two TPO oak trees are being retained and protected at the front of the site. The improvements to the public realm along Gatwick Road will be stark. The buildings are set back approximately 14 metres from the road, allowing 15 trees in 2 rows to be planted along this green buffer. 35 good quality trees in total are being planted as a result of these proposals. The future occupiers demand a highly functional and almost utilitarian building, but the proposed units go beyond this, having been designed to a high quality specification both internally and externally. The units will appear as an avant-garde warehouse fit for creative industries or research and development, whilst from the north will appear as high-quality office development. The mix of colours and high-spec materials will create a more visually interesting elevation than is the norm for such uses. These sustainable and well-designed buildings will hold this corner of Manor Royal in high regard for the long term and deliver a policy-compliant scheme which delivers the aspirations of the Manor Royal Design Guide SPD. We strongly believe that this development will greatly improve the site and the wider area, and we would urge councillors to follow the officer's recommendation to approve the application. That's the end of the statement, and there are no further statements for this item.
Thank you, Ms. Tamplin. We will now begin consideration of the application. Please turn on your camera if you wish to speak. And I can already see we have Councillor Peter Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I probably need to declare an interest on this application as I'm Director of Manor Royal Business District, if the officer could record that, please. Broadly, I recognise this is a benefit to Manor Royal Business District, and it is a good, well thought out application, and clearly the applicants have put a lot of effort into thinking it through, and I'm supportive of it. But I have a couple of detailed questions and comments. Firstly, in 5.21, the officer report talks about the site being within acceptable walking distance of local train services. Now, I'm not quite sure that everybody would necessarily agree with that. Even Gatwick would be a good 25-30 minutes walk, I think, maybe more. And certainly Three Bridges would be quite a hazardous walk, I think. But more importantly, it refers to access to the cycle network. Now, in practice, there is National Cycle Route 21 goes along the western edge of the site, but in front of the site there is no access to the cycle network. There's just pavements, and similarly you have to go along to the left, to the west, when you come out of the site to get to traffic lights to cross over to the other side of the site, the northern side of the site, where we have quarters built again with the cycle path that goes through to Gatwick Station. So I'd like to ask why we haven't got a requirement for some Section 106 money or funding to upgrade this part of the cycle network, and in fact to connect it as proposed cycle route along Gatwick Road. Why we haven't got the pieces coming through with this application to join that up. And the second comments I'd like to make, if I can just find them, are related to the sustainability. This was referred to in the submission that Jess just read out, and it says that it's going to have solar panels that will be controlled by condition, and that the BREEAM standard will be controlled by condition. But I see one condition, but not both covered by the conditions. And I'd like to make sure that we have got conditions to require both the provision of solar photovoltaic and also the overall trend energy strategy, including these heat pumps. Thank you very much.
Councillor Irvine.
Thank you. Well, I'll be voting in favour of this with some enthusiasm, Chair, because it does seem to me that we've heard a lot recently about bad times that could be afflicting Crawley in terms of jobs and employment. This is a site which is a brownfield site. We've got 2 units standing empty, being absolutely no good to anybody. And there's this proposal here to redevelop this site and provide what I think the applicant said was up to 210 jobs, which is, makes a contribution towards employment prospects in Crawley. And I appreciate what the applicant said in the letter, because they did stress employment, they did stress regeneration and bringing money into Crawley's economy. And I think all those things have got to be welcomed. There might be 1 or 2 niggles to be ironed out, but I mean, personally, I would look forward to the time when the car park there is full of the cars of the staff and the cycle parking spaces are full of the bikes of those people who choose to cycle to work and not drive. So all in all, I can only see this as a good thing for Crawley. Thank you.
Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the style and design of this building, is far more interesting, forward-looking, and attractive than our previous application. It I think will look good on that site. I do have a little bit of a concern about very large lorries. I'm looking at the Google Map view of it. very large lorries turning into the Churchill Court from Manor Royal, particularly coming from the roundabout direction, because it does look very tight, and I appreciate that it does sort of cover it in the officer's report, but that is a very congested route in the mornings, and I am concerned about the ability of lorries going in and out of that, and I just really want confirmation that it has been carefully considered, and that access route planned adequately. Otherwise, I think it looks a fabulous design, and will be very attractive.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other cameras coming on. So Mrs. McPherson, perhaps you would care to come back on that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just looking a few points up as you were going through those. With regard to the comments Councillor Smith has made about 5.12, yeah, I would agree with him. Actually, it's a little some way from Three Bridges Station. It's certainly an accessible location, but maybe not so easily walkable from the train station. So I'm not sure where that was lifted from. In terms of the access to the cycle network, I was having a look through. Has it been anything that's been specifically asked for? Even though we did comment or did consult the cycle forum, so that hasn't come through. However, I would say that as part of the travel plan and the air quality abatement measures that are referred to in the air quality and noise section of the report, there is a sort of mitigation measures as part of that travel plan and that requirement, and those suggested measures include improvements for sort of sustainable transport, promotion of walking and cycling. So it's possible that when that condition's done, that can be looked at that stage, but it wasn't specifically raised by either the highway officer or the cycle forum or during the consultation process. So there isn't a specific section 106 requirement for a sort of an uplift or improvements to those facilities, I'm afraid. In terms of the solar panels and the sort of ensuring the sustainability, the solar panels condition is secured through condition 11, which again is required full details for again, obviously to see full details, primarily actually to ensure they're fitted in a safe way to avoid glare to the aircraft, but there is a condition that they should be on, and its expectation is that they are going to be installed because of the requirements from the BREEAM Excellent for the energy and water consumption in the high spec buildings. So that's part of the sort of integral sort of BREEAM strategy that the applicants have adopted for their new buildings. And the overall energy one, I think that was also covered because there's a requirement, I think, for a post-construction certificate in condition 17, which is a requirement that we're putting on a lot of new developments now, so that they can certify that they've reached a high energy performance in line with the requirements of policy ENV 6. So again, there's an expectation that that certification and then those specifications needs to be met as part of the development to ensure that they meet the highest environmental credentials in line with the local plan requirements. The only other one I had was the query that Councillor Jaggard had about the swept path and the lorries turning in and out, and I could see from the officer's report and file that she went back a number of times during the course of the application to check the arrangements for both both checking for both units, because as I say, it did look a little bit or does look a little bit tight, and West Sussex have confirmed that the tracking for both the units is safe and is acceptable. So there are swept path plans on the application file which demonstrate that that can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions or comments from members of the committee? I can't see any cameras going on, so just before I call the vote, I will give mine, which is I'm very pleased to see people investing in Crawley and bringing new jobs and new businesses to our town. And that might give you a hint for how I'm thinking of voting. Anyway, I move the recommendation, which is to permit, subject to the conclusion of a Section 106 agreement and the conditions set out in the report, together with the revised Condition 9. Could I please ask the Vice Chair to second? Thank you.
Yeah, I second the motion, subject to the aforementioned conditions.
Thank you very much. Would the Democratic Services Officer please call the vote?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a recorded vote being taken on agenda item 6. Committee members are asked to vote for or against the recommendation before them, or by way of abstention. Please ensure that your video feed is live before declaring your vote. Councillor Ascough.
For.
Councillor Belvin.
For.
Councillor Hart, could I please ask you to turn your camera back on? Okay, I'll come back to Councillor Hart. Councillor Irvine.
For.
Councillor Jaggard.
For.
Councillor Mugale.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Thank you. Could I ask Councillors Pickett, Rana and Smith to please turn their cameras on?
My camera is on.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Rana.
For.
Okay. Councillor Pickett, I can't see that your camera's on, but if you could declare your vote, please.
Yes, actually, the indicator on my screen isn't my camera is on, but anyway, my vote is for.
Lovely. And Councillor Hart. Okay, thank you, Councillor Hart. Could you please declare your vote?
Yes, apologies, the internet dropped out. Yeah, I'm for the motion.
Lovely. Thank you. So that's the vote has been taken, Chair, and unanimously voted for the application.
Thank you very much. Application CR 2020-0719 full Vanguard House and Victory House, Churchill Court, Northgate, Crawley, has been permitted, subject to the conclusion of a Section 106 agreement and the conditions, including the revised Condition 9 and informatives set out in the report PES 361B. That takes us on to the supplemental agenda, and I'm pleased to say, or unpleased to say, that there are no supplemental agenda items this evening, and that brings us to the end of the agenda. Therefore, I'd like to thank the members and the planning officers and democratic services officers who've supported this meeting. And with the business of the planning committee now concluded, this meeting is closed at 21:09. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.